There exists a certain demeanor that remarkably few women understand, yet the moment she awakens it within herself, men of substantial character not only feel drawn to her, they experience a profound sense of being outmatched, not due to any aggressive behavior on her part, nor because she pretends to be beyond reach, but rather because she embodies a particular kind of inner strength that simply cannot be manufactured or faked. What makes this even more remarkable is that this demeanor doesn't originate from the ego, it emerges from the soul itself. Jung once expressed that what a man truly admires in a woman isn't her physical appearance, but rather the manner in which she carries her own authentic nature. And when a woman activates this elevated essence, this presence that doesn't plead, doesn't chase, doesn't attempt to prove anything, yet can be sensed from considerable distance, her energy triggers something within them that they cannot regulate: immediate respect, profound attraction, and an instinctive desire to elevate themselves so they don't lose her. This presentation will unveil what this demeanor is, explain why it causes insecure men to feel threatened, why it ignites men of substantial character, and how to activate this within yourself, without manipulation, without playing games, and without compromising your genuine nature. And stay through to the conclusion, because that's where I'll reveal the secret psychological component that transforms your presence into a natural filtering mechanism. A mechanism that automatically repels the wrong men and attracts only those who are genuinely at your level. On this platform, we share in a practical and directly applicable manner the powerful psychology of the esteemed Carl Jung. So, I encourage you to engage with this content and subscribe right now so you won't miss anything that's coming your way. Key principle number 1, the demeanor that reveals you're not available for drama, and why this earns his immediate respect. There's a truth nobody has ever shared with you, because if you had known it when you were younger, your romantic life would be completely different. Men of substantial character don't fall in love with the woman who is available. They fall in love with the woman who is defined. The woman who knows her center, who has nothing to prove, who doesn't beg for emotion, who doesn't orbit around anyone, and who never negotiates her inner peace to maintain a connection. This woman possesses a demeanor so powerful that it causes many men to feel threatened, but awakens the soul of those who are at her level. This demeanor is the following: I'm not available for emotional drama, nor for the men who depend on it. And even though it may seem straightforward, this demeanor isn't a phrase. It's not a posture. It's not a psychological game. It's an energetic language, an interior presence, a certainty that is felt before she even opens her mouth. Understand this deeply. A man of substantial character isn't afraid of a strong woman. He's afraid of a woman who doesn't need emotional validation to feel complete. Because this woman cannot be manipulated, cannot be dragged into chaos, cannot be confused by words, and cannot be seduced by inconsistency. She lives on another frequency, the frequency of clarity. And clarity is the most powerful filter that exists. Imagine for a moment a woman who doesn't crumble when he approaches, who doesn't melt when he chooses her, who doesn't lose her center because he shows interest. A woman who listens, evaluates, feels, observes, and decides from a place of calm, not from a place of lack. This woman doesn't reject, doesn't harden, doesn't become cold. She simply doesn't lean in where there's no coherence. And this demeanor, this inner calm that doesn't seek to impress anyone, is exactly what a man of substantial character perceives as pure magnetism. Because men of substantial character also have a shadow. A shadow that has encountered women who crumble immediately, who surrender without filters, who confuse intensity with connection, who believe that masculine validation equals love. But when he encounters a woman who doesn't react to emotional stimuli, something awakens within them. Curiosity, respect, desire to understand her, impulse to elevate themselves. Because for a powerful man, nothing is more attractive than a woman who doesn't allow herself to be swept away by the current of his energy. A woman who doesn't surrender her center due to anxiety or need. A woman who doesn't seek to be chosen, but to be honored. Here's the most fascinating part of Jungian psychology. Jung stated that what intimidates us in another person isn't their strength. It's what we haven't yet evolved within ourselves. This is why this demeanor of unavailability to drama has such a profound psychological effect. It exposes, without a single word, the immature parts of the man. It eliminates all possibility of emotional manipulation. It extinguishes all power dynamics. It disarms every attempt at chaos. He feels something like, with her I cannot play emotional games. With her I need to show my best self. With her I need to be coherent. With her I have no right to my shadow. And this feeling, for a man of substantial character, isn't rejection, it's an awakening. Now I'll take you into a concrete scenario so you can understand perfectly. Imagine he tries to enter a confusing emotional dynamic, as he has done with other women. Intense one day, distant the next, compliments, then makes excuses and disappears. This pattern works with women who live in emotional anxiety because it activates their insecurities. But with you, it doesn't work. You don't revolve around his comings and goings. You don't enter his chaotic rhythm. You don't respond from emotion, but from coherence. He tries to provoke an emotional reaction, and you don't give it to him. Not because you're cold, but because you have clarity. Not because you're playing games, but because you're centered. Not because you want to manipulate him, but because you don't live from necessity. In that instant, he feels something he had never felt before. She doesn't depend on what I do. This thought destabilizes him profoundly, because most men have never had to earn an emotional space. But with you, he perceives that being seductive, charming, or confident isn't sufficient. It's necessary to be coherent, and this causes him to feel threatened, but also attracts him, because coherence is the only true challenge that a man of substantial character recognizes. Not drama, not intensity, not availability, coherence. When a man perceives that you're only available for his essence and not for his shadow, he feels, if I want to be in her life, I need to become someone worthy of her energy. And this silent phrase, this thought that crosses his unconscious mind, is the beginning of authentic respect. If you seek this genuine respect, write RESPECT in the comments. The demeanor that causes a man of substantial character to feel threatened isn't arrogance, nor indifference, nor emotional distance. It's a woman who lives aligned with her peace, who doesn't sacrifice her center for anyone, and who doesn't invest her energy in connections that don't know how to carry it. Because this woman represents an inner standard, a natural boundary, a gentle but non-negotiable strength. And this type of psychological presence isn't common. This is why insecure men flee, but men of substantial character stay, approach, and elevate themselves. And now that you know what the demeanor is that triggers his immediate respect, in key principle number 2, you'll understand how your emotional presence automatically filters insecure men and ignites genuinely valuable men. Key principle number 2, how your emotional presence filters insecure men and ignites men of substantial character. Your emotional presence is a filter, not your words, not your appearance, not what you post, not what you say you're looking for. What genuinely separates the men who are worthwhile from the men who will consume you is the energy you carry internally. And when a woman possesses emotional clarity, when she knows who she is, what she deserves, and what she will no longer carry, this clarity becomes a vibrational field that automatically filters insecure men and immediately ignites men of substantial character. It's not magic, it's not diva behavior, it's not coldness, it's not arrogance, it's deep psychology. A man reads your presence within seconds. He doesn't do this consciously. He does it from instinct, from ego, from shadow, from emotional memory. And his initial reaction has nothing to do with your beauty, but with how your energy confronts him or awakens him. I'll explain this to you with absolute clarity. An insecure man feels threatened by a centered woman, while a man of substantial character feels profoundly attracted to her. It's the same woman, but two types of men react in completely opposite ways. Imagine this scene. You enter a space, and without saying a word, your presence already speaks. You're not looking for who will choose you. You don't ask for attention. You don't try to appear perfect. You don't analyze who might be interested in you. You are simply yourself, calm, clear, open on your own axis. Insecure men don't perceive this clarity as beauty. They perceive it as a threat to their control, to their emotional manipulation game, to their need to feel superior through your insecurity. An insecure man needs you to need him to feel valuable. He needs you to question yourself so he doesn't have to question himself. He needs you to be accessible so he can choose when to come and when to leave. but you're not accessible. You're centered. And that centeredness breaks the only dynamic he knows how to operate within. So he doesn't approach with genuine intention. He doesn't approach to know you, to honor you, to build something authentic. He approaches to test you. And when he perceives that you can't be tested because you're not living from emotional deficiency, he retreats. He invents excuses, suddenly becomes busy, vanishes without explanation. And here's what matters. This isn't a loss for you. This is the filter working perfectly. Because the man who flees your clarity was never going to give you what you deserve. Now observe the opposite reaction. A man of substantial character enters the same space, encounters the same woman, and perceives the same presence. But his internal reaction is completely different. He doesn't feel threatened. He feels attracted. He doesn't feel his control slipping away. He feels curiosity awakening. He doesn't sense danger to his ego. He senses an opportunity for his soul. Because a man of substantial character isn't looking for a woman who will fill his voids. He's looking for a woman who has already filled her own. He's not seeking someone he can control. He's seeking someone he can admire. He's not searching for someone who needs him to feel complete. He's searching for someone who chooses him because she recognizes him. And when this man perceives your emotional presence, something activates within him that insecure men will never understand. The impulse to elevate himself, the desire to be coherent, the need to show his best version, the recognition that you're not just another woman, you're a woman worth fighting for. Not fighting to conquer, but fighting to become someone who deserves to be by your side. Here's the crucial point. Your emotional presence doesn't push away or attract men. It reveals them. It reveals who is truly ready for a deep connection and who is still operating from emotional immaturity. It reveals who can handle a woman who knows her value and who still needs someone to doubt themselves to feel secure. It reveals who comes to add to your life and who comes to take from your energy. And this revelation happens without you needing to say a single word, ask a single question, or make a single demand. Your presence does everything, because emotional presence is the most honest language that exists. It can't be faked, can't be forced, can't be imitated. Either you possess it or you don't. And when you do possess it, the right men feel it instantly. But for your emotional presence to truly function as this powerful filter, you need to understand something essential that many women don't comprehend. Your emotional presence isn't maintained by what you do, but by what you no longer tolerate. It's not built by being strong, but by no longer accepting being diminished. It's not constructed by being independent, but by no longer depending on external validation to feel whole. Every time you accept less than you deserve, your emotional presence weakens. Every time you tolerate incoherence, your vibrational field drops. Every time you negotiate your peace for a connection, your filter loses precision. But when you decide that your emotional well-being is non-negotiable, something shifts within you. An internal certainty that can be felt from a distance, a clarity that needs no announcement, a strength that requires no demonstration. And this is when your emotional presence becomes so powerful that it not only filters men, it transforms them. The insecure man, upon encountering you, is confronted with everything he hasn't yet resolved within himself. The man of substantial character, upon encountering you, is inspired to become the best version of himself. Both encounter the same woman, but only one has the courage to rise to her level. And that's the beauty of a well-calibrated emotional presence. It doesn't punish, doesn't judge, doesn't condemn. It simply is, and in being, it separates those who are ready from those who are not. Key principle number 3, the elevated identity that doesn't pursue, but attracts only men at her emotional height. There exists a level of feminine identity so elevated, so aligned, so authentic, that when a woman reaches it, she no longer needs to chase anything. Not a man, not validation, not security, not affection. Because she has discovered the greatest truth any woman can discover. What she seeks outside of her has always been within her. This elevated identity isn't a phase. It's not a temporary attitude, not a strategy to attract men, not a psychological game. It's a profound internal transformation that occurs when a woman stops seeking herself in another's gaze and begins to find herself in her own essence. And when this transformation occurs, something extraordinary happens. Men don't just notice, they feel a call. Not a superficial call, but a call from the soul, from the shadow, from the unconscious. A call that says, "This woman knows who she is, and if I want to be in her life, I need to know who I am too." This is the elevated identity, the identity that doesn't pursue, but attracts. The identity that doesn't demand, but inspires. The identity that doesn't manipulate, but transforms. And most importantly, the identity that doesn't accept less, because she has finally understood that accepting less isn't love, it's betrayal of herself. Let me take you deeper into what this elevated identity genuinely is, because many women confuse it with something it's not. It's not being perfect. It's not pretending you don't need anyone. It's not becoming insensitive or cold. Elevated identity is living from your center, not from your wound. It's responding from consciousness, not from fear. It's choosing from clarity, not from necessity. It's being vulnerable, but not fragile. It's being open, but not available to chaos. It's being gentle, but never weak. The woman of elevated identity is the woman who finally understands who she is and what she will never again negotiate. When a woman enters this state, everything that isn't at her level falls away on its own. She doesn't need to repel, block, demand, or announce. Her emotional field does the work for her, because a woman of elevated identity no longer operates from necessity. She operates from vibration, and this vibration is a more precise filter than any red flag. To understand how to maintain this demeanor, you first need to know what destroyed it. A woman loses her elevated identity when she abandons herself to be chosen, adapts herself to not bother anyone, explains herself to not be misunderstood, justifies herself to not lose someone, breaks herself to carry someone who never carried her, betrays herself to keep a connection alive. Each act of self-abandonment tells the universe, her unconscious, and the men around her, "My value is flexible. My presence is negotiable. My essence can be reduced." But when a woman awakens to her elevated identity, these phrases no longer make sense, because her emotional life becomes governed by a single law. What dims my light doesn't belong to me. This law produces such a profound transformation that the low-value man cannot tolerate it. But the man of substantial character recognizes it as an emotional home. I want you to imagine a scene to enter this identity from within. There's a woman who always placed others first. She managed the emotional climate of the connection alone. She held the uncomfortable conversations alone. She waited for messages that never came. She forgave absences without explanation. She tolerated inconsistencies, saying, "Nobody is perfect," even though she was the only one paying the price. Until one day, not an external day, but an inner day, her soul whispers, "Never again." And this never again isn't a scream, isn't a threat, isn't drama. It's a seed that falls into her consciousness and begins to germinate slowly. On this day, she perceives what has always been before her, but what she refused to see. Love isn't proven by releasing pieces of yourself so the other person can stand. Love is proven by standing first yourself. And when this seed germinates, her identity elevates. The elevated woman no longer responds from emotional lack, but from internal abundance. She no longer authorizes half connections, no longer accepts minimal efforts, no longer receives intensity without consistency, no longer opens her heart to someone who doesn't have clean hands. This woman no longer seeks to be chosen. This woman chooses. And when a woman begins choosing from this level, men divide into two very clear categories. Those who feel crushed by her inner strength, flee, disappear, invent excuses, feel threatened or insufficient, not because she is too much, but because they are too little to sustain a connection with someone who no longer lives from the wound. Those who feel the call to elevate themselves to her level, activate, mature, reorganize, align emotionally. For them, the elevated woman isn't a threat. She's an opportunity, a mirror, a noble challenge, an invitation to their best version. But here's the crucial point: how to maintain this elevated identity, how to prevent the world, habit, or a toxic connection from bringing you back to the old pattern. The true answer: elevated identity is maintained through decisions, not through emotions. Your emotions come and go. There will be days of solitude, of nostalgia, of desire, of temptation to return to the old. It's normal, you're human. But your elevated identity doesn't depend on how you feel today. It depends on what you decide to do with that feeling. A woman of elevated identity can miss someone and remain whole, can desire and not settle, can be tempted and still choose her peace, can feel fear and not retreat to what hurts her. The difference is there. She doesn't abandon herself even when it hurts. And this is the difference between a woman who attracts anyone and a woman who attracts only men of her emotional height. Elevated identity is a lifestyle, not a moment, not an emotional peak, but an emotional foundation, not a demeanor, but an essence, not a strategy, but a vibration. How to maintain this vibration? By surrounding yourself with environments that nourish your growth, listening to your intuition before lack, releasing what diminishes you, claiming your power without apologizing, saying no when before you would have betrayed yourself, not fighting for anyone who doesn't also fight for you. And here's the most beautiful point. When your identity elevates, you no longer need to attract a man of substantial character. It's he who feels the impulse to come to you. Not because he needs you, but because he recognizes you. Not because you manipulate him, but because you inspire him. Not because you pressure him, but because you expand him. An elevated woman doesn't ask for love. She creates the space where true love can enter. An elevated woman doesn't demand respect. She embodies a level where respect is the only way to treat her. An elevated woman doesn't seek connection. She provokes authentic connections because she lives from authenticity. And this key principle concludes with a truth to never forget. What you are on the inside determines what you attract on the outside. When you level up internally, your romantic life levels up with you. Men don't change when you change your words. They change when you change your identity. Conclusion. The truth is this. Men of substantial character don't appear in a woman's life to save her. They appear when she has already saved herself. And what genuinely attracts them isn't beauty, nor sweetness, nor the capacity to surrender, but this elevated identity that is born when a woman stops living from the wound and begins living from consciousness. The demeanor that intimidates and attracts simultaneously. This mixture of gentle strength, internal coherence, and emotional presence isn't a strategy. It's the result of having chosen herself. It's the energy of a woman who no longer betrays herself, who no longer sacrifices herself for unstable connections, who no longer gives herself halfway, who no longer loses herself chasing the desire to be loved. When you become this woman, everything changes. Insecure men distance themselves on their own, because your light shows exactly the shadow they're fleeing from. But men of substantial character approach, activate, elevate themselves, because an elevated woman doesn't settle for being an emotional refuge. She becomes an emotional destination. This is the difference between being desired and being chosen, between being wanted and being respected, between attracting presence and attracting genuine commitment. And if this presentation leaves you with just one truth, it's this. You don't need to become more, so he will choose you. You need to become yourself. Your identity is your magnetism. If you accept your new identity, write elevated in the comments. And if this message resonated with you, I invite you to leave powerful engagement, subscribe, and activate notifications without fail. Thank you for being here.